about retirement planning, but this is specific for millennials. Now, we're going to talk about retirement planning for millennials, and you ask why. Well, a recent Goldman Sachs Retirement Survey and Insights report found that 34% of millennial respondents report feeling like they're behind on their retirement savings. Now, the last few years, as we know, has been a time of financial tumult for many individuals. In April 2020, in the US alone, there were 20.5 million jobs lost as a result of the pandemic. And with inflation running up the costs of many necessities, Indians are also running tight on their budgets. This is an even bigger reason for you to plan your retirement well. Our experts today are Mrin Agarwal, financial educator and director of Finsafe India, and we also have Atul, the founder and CEO of Scripbox, joining us on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining in. You know, Mrin, I want to start with you because we've got, after we sort of put out on social media that we're doing this episode, we got so many queries. So I want to first understand, for a millennial who is perhaps between the age of 27 and 42, what are the main factors needed to build the right kind of corpus?
So good afternoon, Sonia, and it's always a pleasure to be on your show. Yes, I think the first thing that you really need to start off with is what are your current expenses? You know, many a time people tend to look at a specific number in mind, like saying 1 crore or 5 crores or 10 crores. But what you do need to start off is, first of all, get your hands on a retirement planning calculator, and there are lots of them available online. But the first question you need to know is, what are your current expenses? And is this the same sort of lifestyle that you think that you want to maintain in the future? Based on that, of course, it's very, very important to get the the corpus that you need to build needs to be inflation adjusted as well, right? Because there is inflation, which is impacting the value of money. So, of course, the second question then is that what sort of inflation do you expect? If we look at the long-term average, typically as financial planners, we take about 6%. Of course, what age you want to retire is very important, because if you want to retire earlier, you need to look at saving more and building a larger corpus. And the return on investment, which is also proportionate to the sort of risk that you want to take with your investments, is also another factor that you will have to keep in mind. So when you actually work on this calculator, and the reason I always tell people to work on this calculator is because then you actually know, first of all, what is the goal, what is the exact target, and what you need to actually be saving every month to reach this particular target.
Got it. And you know, you started off by saying that use a retirement calculator, and there are so many free and effective retirement calculators available online. In fact, Scripbox has a very good retirement calculator as well. So we have Atul of Scripbox, who's right here with us. Atul, thanks a lot for joining in on the show. Start off by telling us, of course, we all know that one needs to start saving early for retirement, etc. But what are the main factors that I would need to build a right corpus and retire early? And when we talk about retiring early, what exactly do we mean?
Thanks very much, Sonia, for having me on the show. And thank you for the kind words about Scripbox and our calculators. So I think first, what is the definition of retirement? Retirement is when you have sufficient money to live, to survive you and your dependents' lifetime, right? And I think a big mistake people make is actually underestimating the longevity. I mean, the statistics say that about the longevity of Indians has gone up by about 20% in the last 30 years. And given the advances in medical science, we expect this to even increase further, right? So if you're planning to retire, you're 42 or you're 40 as a millennial, and you're planning to retire at 50, remember you're going to live 40 years more. So you have to plan for those 40 years, and not only for yourself, but your dependents, your wife, and maybe somebody else. So the first thing you need to factor in is what does financial freedom mean? And it's not about age. It's about having enough money. I mean, when you do a survey, and a lot of people will talk about the scariest thing is about death. I don't think the scariest thing is about death. The scariest thing is not having money when you're still alive, right? And to depend on somebody else. So I think that has to be factored in. Post that, obviously, I think Nal said very well, inflation, risk, your appetite, how much do you need as a corpus? The other thing we always factor in is obviously take your current expenses, adjust for inflation for 20, 30, 40 years out, when you're going to stop earning for a living. Retirement does not mean that you stop working, you stop earning a living, and you can do what you want to do. Beyond that, I think it's also very important that you plan beyond retirement. Right? The money management becomes even more critical beyond that. And a lot of people underestimate they take their current expenses, which is monthly expenses, but don't factor in, if you're going to live 40 years after retirement, you will probably upgrade your house. You will probably buy a bunch of cars. You will buy white goods every 10 years. So factoring all of the cost of those inflated costs are really critical to deciding on your corpus before you start actually doing that. And yeah, you said our mantra is start early, keep investing and stay invested.
But you know, there's a problem. There's a hitch in that, right? And Mrin, I want to come to you on this. I was having a discussion with one of my millennial colleagues, and he told me that very rightfully that, you know, a lot of the millennials who perhaps live in Bombay pay rent, right? In any case, we know real estate has become unaffordable now. So saving even 5,000 or 10,000 rupees per month is a bit of a task sometimes, because a large amount of your corpus over the years, perhaps you also try and remove for a lot of these expenses, whether it's loans or, you know, rent or even buying a house, etc. So what are the expenses that one needs to plan for, and how do you go about, you know, building that corpus without sort of touching it?
Well, I think, of course, the expenses that you need to plan for are, of course, the living expenses, the everyday expenses, of course, medical expenses and pursuits. And of course, what Atul also mentioned about the fact that you would be upgrading your lifestyle. Like if you look 10 years back to now, the difference in your lifestyle, you will see that in the next 10 years as well, right? So of course, you need to plan for that. But I would actually put a lot of emphasis on one particular expense, which is basically pursuits, because I think times have changed a lot. And whatever age people want to retire at, whether it's 40, 50 or 60, the point is that you do need to keep yourself mentally engaged. And to keep yourself mentally engaged, you will be the one who will have to spend the money. So, you know, I think that's another big component that a lot of people kind of miss out, right? They look at rent, they look at groceries, but they miss out these important components. So I think that's important. Now, yes, it is a challenge to save given the rising cost of living in urban cities, especially. Yes, it is a challenge to save, but then what's life without challenges?
Okay, so if one is starting late, Mrin, how does one catch up? Because the reason we're having this episode is a lot of the millennials have not even started investing, right? As we were just talking about that survey that Goldman Sachs put out, 35% of millennials feel that they're not prepared for retirement. So if one is starting late, what is the catch-up technique?
Yeah, it's a pretty grim situation when you look at most surveys across the world, honestly. And, honestly, people feel that retirement is something that they need to start saving for only in their 40s. And honestly, it's quite late by then. So a couple of things that you could do is, of course, reduce expenses. I think, again, we do see in India that most people have a large part of their portfolio in traditional investments, which are not beating inflation. So certainly, you would need to look at reallocating your portfolio into instruments that actually beat inflation, trying to build other income sources. So I'm not saying moonlighting, but I'm saying, for example, maybe if your spouse is not earning, then, maybe your spouse needs to look at augmenting her income. So you need to see how you can augment the family income. I know it's easy for me to say it, but I think, the easier thing for people to do, as I said, was reallocating some portion of their investments from safe traditional investments into equities. And that's simply because, a small change in your equity allocation can actually lead to a much larger retirement corpus. And if you have time on your side, so even if you're starting right now when you're 35, and you have 15 to 25 years available to you, it can make a big difference. So, for example, if you were to be investing 50,000 rupees every month at the age of 35 for the next 25 years, and you take a 10% allocation to equity versus taking a 30% allocation to equity, the difference in the corpus is also going to be almost 3 times or slightly higher because of the compounding allocation, right? So I think that's important. And within the equity space also, do not just be very careful about what you're choosing. Most of the shows that I do, people have like 10 funds in different thematic or sector funds. Just honestly, if you have time on your side, I think the mid and the small cap categories work really well. So an index fund with a mid cap and a small cap fund should actually just be enough to save for retirement. But I think, yes, I think two things. One, reduce expenses, and second, increase your equity allocation.
Okay, this is actually a very helpful table, and I just want to get it up on board here for our viewers in case you missed it as well. So for all you 35-year-olds or thereabout, right, if you invest just, I mean, 50,000 is a large amount, to be honest. So thereabouts, if you can do that, this is a ballpark calculation that Mrin has helped us with. If you have a 30% equity allocation, then the corpus that you can build at the age of 50 is about almost 3 crores. But as I was saying, 50,000 is a very large amount for you to sort of invest per month. I know a lot of people cannot do that, but this is just sort of, you know, one helpful calculation. But I wanted your thoughts on this, Atul. If one wants to build a corpus like this, what are the tools that you need? Is it largely into large cap funds? What is the allocation towards mid and small cap? Because now we're seeing mid and small cap come back in a big way as well.
So I'll avoid commenting on the categories or subcategories specifically. I think that depends on the risk appetite and the aptitude of the specific investor. Yes, equity, absolutely agreed, should be a larger part of your corpus. And why 30%, why not 70% is a separate discussion, especially if you're 35. I think the first thing, or the two things I would say, apart from the investing strategy, is save more. Right? I think people underestimate this needs and wants, and I respect Mrinal's comment around pursuits. But I think pursuits can wait for a little bit till you invest enough for a happy retirement. The other is you have to accept the reality that early retirement is probably a myth if you've not started early. Right? If you've not started saving early, it's very likely that you will retire slightly later, and you'll have to work longer and upskill yourself. So yeah, the answer is in 3 parts. Invest more in equity. If you've not started now, reduce your expenses, put more into investments. And I think at 30% investments savings rate is important, and increase the most important part which people miss out, which we insisted on Scripbox, is sort of a 10 to 15% increase in your annual commitment. Your salary is going up. You are in your earning stage of your life. You are accumulating. And especially if you're about, say, 50 to 55, and this is about 10 years away or 15 years away for the millennials, when your children leave home, increase your commitment for the next 5 years. And I think that combination of reducing expenses, putting much more into equity, and yeah, I mean, I'll leave the choice of mid cap, small cap to bigger experts than myself. But I believe that depends on the customer's choice. But yeah, that's how I would think about just longer period of investing, larger amount to be invested, and larger amount into equity.
Okay, there is a very helpful table that you have given us as well. So I just want to get that up on the screen if we can. If a 35-year-old wants to retire at 60 and your expenses per month are 50,000, your net income is 65,000. Now, you know, this is very confusing for me. So, Atul, if you'd want to explain this, you're saying that a required corpus for someone who's 35 will be 7.7 crores. I mean, that seems alarming, right? if someone's 35 and hasn't started investing and their net income is just 65,000 rupees. Just explain this to us. If I have a net income of around 50 to 65,000 rupees, how much should I put in terms of SIP? And by the time I'm 60, you know, what would my corpus be?
Yeah, so if you just follow this discipline of putting 22,000 rupees a month aside now, which is reducing your current expenses by 5,000, you already have 15,000 available or 7,000 rupees, which I think people can do, right? But the reality is that while there is inflation, which takes the required amount to 7.7 crores, which assumes you're going to live to 30 years more, right? Because that is what you'll eat into. More importantly, the power of compounding. What people underestimate completely is that 22,000 rupees invested for the next 25 years and increased by 10% every year will get you to your goals. And this includes a glide path. So all our retirement calculators include a glide path, include an asset allocation, heavy equity in the beginning. And as you get closer to your retirement goals, more in fixed income, and then goes down to a much lower. So this assumes about a blended rate of about 8 to 9% over the period. But assumes that this money at 7.7 crores, inflation adjusted, will be sufficient for you for the next 30 years. Right? That's the more important part. And the really important part for our millennials is that the 7.7 crores is a large amount. It scares you. It's like that shock and awe, but it's very achievable. If you just get disciplined now, start now, it's very achievable.
Okay, well, that encouragement is important, right? Because these levels, these amounts do sound very alarming, especially for someone who perhaps is starting late. Got that? Well, let's do one thing. Let us slip into a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back in just a bit to talk to you about your retirement planning. Welcome back to Smart Money. Very important and interesting topic for all of us millennials is retirement planning. And today we have Atul Shinghal, founder and CEO of Scripbox, and Mrin Agarwal, financial educator and director of Finsafe India, to tell us how we should do effectively do our financial planning. So Mrin, there are many options within equities, right, for investors. There is the NPS equity scheme, there are retirement funds, there are general equity funds, there is the annuity schemes from insurance companies as well. Tell us, how does an investor decide on which one to pick, and what is your take on retirement funds?
All right. So I think one, from the cost perspective, it's going to be NPS, followed by equity funds, and then followed by the annuity schemes, because as we all know, the annuity schemes are pretty expensive. And of course, that's going to basically eat into the returns. But I think, when you're looking at between NPS and mutual funds, I think what one really needs to do is first ask oneself that, do I want pension in retirement? And certainly if you want pension in retirement, then NPS is your product. If you feel that you can manage equity funds on your own and you can remain disciplined and remain invested for the long term, and you want more flexibility, then go in for the equity funds. I do highly recommend NPS because I think it's a great product. It gives you exposure to equities, provided you choose the active equity option. It's low cost and it keeps you disciplined and hence compounds your money. Now, with respect to retirement funds, there is this retirement mutual fund category. It's a solution-oriented fund category. Most of the funds that are available are actually managed as balance funds, and the category is done fine. It's what I just find is that it's a little difficult to actually compare funds within the category, because most funds have different allocations to equity and debt. And if you look at the general categories, which I mentioned, which is, let's say, index, small cap, or mid cap, these have, in any case, given a better performance. So unless you feel that you want a fund where you want to basically put it aside for a particular goal, I think you're just better off with the general equity categories. I
thought as much, and I wanted Atul's view on this as well. Atul, would you agree that, these solution-oriented funds, as they call it, retirement funds is one of them, you think it's better to avoid them because you really don't know where your money is going? The AUM size is also small. It's better to just be invested in, say, a plain vanilla index fund or an ETF?
Sorry for that. I lost connectivity.
Sure. Go ahead. Okay, I think we've lost our connection with Atul. We'll get back to him in a bit. But over the last few months, there have been many queries that have come in as well. Okay, I think Atul is back. Atul, can you hear us?
I can hear you clearly. Sorry for that.
Yeah, go ahead. No, my question to you was, Mrin was saying that, there are so many solution-oriented funds, as we call it. There are retirement funds as well. But do you think instead of getting into that category, it's just better to go with plain vanilla index funds or even ETFs?
I think that's, again, horses for courses. I really can't speak against the industry, right? Because there are product creators who are creating these products. But as wealth managers ourselves, our role is to do appropriate asset allocation at an individual customer level, right? So again, it really depends on each customer's needs. How far are they from retirement? Are they 5 years away? Are they 15 years away? Are they 30 years away? What are they really saving for? What's the risk appetite? So I won't take a blanket answer. It's difficult to compare any of these. It's very customer specific and it's very, very individual need based. So I would say that as a wealth manager, our job is to create that multi-asset portfolio and rebalance it on a regular basis. And manage it that way. So I won't say that retirement funds are particularly bad, but there are better options at an individual customer level, which blend both cost, risk, and obviously returns in a blended manner. So if I've got, if I make sense that.
Sure, got that. We're running out of time, so I quickly wanted to squeeze in a couple of queries that we're getting from our viewers. The first one comes in from Akash Desai, and he says he's just 23 years old and he wants to retire by 40, great plan, but he wants some guidance on how he should go about it. This is the dream age, right, Mrin? Everyone wants to retire by 40, but he has age on his side. He's just 23. What's your advice to him?
Well, start investing aggressively. Try to save, of course, on an overall basis, try to save at least 30 to 40% of your take-home income and allocate towards retirement. I would say invest aggressively in equities. You've got age on your side. You've got 17 years to go. So certainly invest. Again, I would say look at more of mid caps, small caps. Look at the NPS option. If you want an easier option which you don't have to keep monitoring, do that. But I think the key would be to really start off right away. And again, remember to use the calculator because you need to plan for the next 40 years after retirement.
Okay, I wish I had thought about retirement when I was 23, right? I had so many years on my side. So I guess, the power of compounding would have worked better. Ambali Sisodia is 25. Well, the generation now has started thinking about retirement early, and I love that. 25-year-old, and he has 4 SIPs of 5,000 each, and he wants to retire by the age of 50. How much would I need to retire by 50? Mrin, do you want to take that one?
Well, I don't have the calculations.
The calculator.
Yeah, I don't have the calculations offhand to give an answer to that. But I would still say the same thing, that look at investing aggressively. And as I said, that, the retirement is not, if you're going to have 30 years, 40 years in retirement, then it's really not about just the living expenses. It's also about, what are you doing to keep yourself mentally engaged? And, don't forget to account for that when you're doing the planning.
Okay. All right. We have one more final query coming in from Ritesh Parekh, who says that his age is 42 and he wants to retire by 60. What should I do in terms of savings? Now, he doesn't have too much in terms of, a number of years on his hand. For someone who's perhaps started off late, very quickly, Mrin, your thoughts?
Well, again, as I would say that he would need to look at saving more, investing more into equity. And these would be my 2 suggestions.
Okay, all right. Well, we will leave it at that. Thanks a lot, Atul and Mrin, for stopping by and speaking to us on CNBC TV18. Appreciate your thoughts and hope to chat with you again on several other important topics. With that, it is a wrap on this edition of Smart Money. Thanks for watching.